There is disagreement among historians as to whether the events that occurred in Tasmania were genocide at all. As historians like Ankerthois argue, historians believe that it was disorganised and shows sporadic violence between natives and colonists. Therefore, it wasn't genocide. However, others like Tom Lawson argue strongly that Britain is a post-genocidal state. By 1824, there were 13,000 colonists, and by 1830 there were 23,500. By 1803 the population of natives was 6,000. In 1818 there were fewer than 2,000, and only 400 by 1829. There were 5 major ways they were exterminated: the seizure of hunting land, the abduction of women and children which prevented reproduction, murder and massacre, a war of extermination after 1826, and after 1829, the capture, exile and incarceration of natives. Quickly, colonists realised land was sustainable. As a result, the British government granted land to them. In the years 1819 to 24, 550,000 acres were granted. Conflict happened at first when both colonists and settlers wanted to hunt in the same areas for the same animals. Attacks on native women occurred because colonists had a belief that they were superior to settlers, and it was so common because there were so many more colonist men than there were settler women. Attacks on natives started happening when colonists arrived in 1803. By 1829, the governor knew of a slave trade of native women, as argued by Breen, although he further argues this may have been in response to the tradition of natives to kidnap and trade women. The British government also contributed towards the issue, as they dehumanised the natives, referring to them as black crows, and putting bounties out for them, and offering money in return for the capture of Aboriginal adults and children. After violence started, many colonists panicked. They didn't know who to negotiate with, as different groups attacked. They weren't united or coordinated, as they were part of different tribes. As a result, British forces decided to carry out mass violence. An example would be the Oyster Cove massacre, where 22 natives were murdered. Other such events took place. The British government feared extinction of the natives would be bad for their image. As a result, they adopted a relocation and reconciliation strategy. This was in essence a relocation one. Natives kept being moved to less hospitable lands. For example, in 1829, 30 were captured and forcibly moved to Bruny Island, and at the end of the year, 2/3 were dead. Elsewhere, others were exposed to diseases from convicts. They led a hunter-gatherer lifestyle and were put into areas with poor water supply and lack of shelter. The British claimed they died due to cold temperatures. This was a blatant lie. The policy was later dropped and it officially became the capture and removal policy. They were stored with convicts and refused food and aid. Then survivors were transferred to Flinders Point. Here, the population decrease was over 99% once people began to arrive. 200 people died. This was likely due to bad water and low food supplies. Overall, I believe this demonstrates that Britain's colonial policies led directly to the genocide of the Tasmanian people. It's clearly shown that their policies were disorganised and they were unclear on what they were doing most of the time, which would later contrast with policy later on.